Hey guys, and welcome back to Dragonborn Industries. Today I want to talk a little bit about Starfinder and do an unboxing of the Starfinder beginner box. So let's start with what Starfinder is. Well, Starfinder is a tabletop roleplay game that is heavily sci-fi based off the Pathfinder platform. So if you've played Pathfinder before, but you don't know much about Starfinder, the rules are very similar. It's a bit more streamlined than Pathfinder, but it transferred over to that quite well. For D&D players, yes, the rules are a little bit more difficult to get your head around, and some of the things are going to be a lot different to what you're used to as playing. But once you get your head around a few of the differences that there are, it becomes very, very fun. For me, Starfinder is all about the setting, which is set in the Pact World, which is a solar system that is based around its main star, but there is a missing planet, Galarion, which is where all of the Pathfinder adventure paths take place. This planet is missing, and in its place is Absalom Station. This is the sort of capital of the solar system, if you will, this giant space station that is where the governing body sits, along with all the politics and also many of the guilds. You then have all of the varying planets going out throughout the solar system, and then the ability to travel and explore an entire galaxy of other little things that you can do. But that sounds very big and very scary, but realistically, it is just a tabletop roleplay game that you can have a sci-fi adventure with and just have fun with. And it was actually the first TTRPG that I ever played, and it was the one that got me hooked straight away. I've been a big sci-fi fan since I was very young, and when I'd spent years holding off playing these games, and I was just so self-conscious about playing them and having to like role play and stuff that I was like, I don't know. And then Starfinder came out, and I agreed to play a game, and within 10 minutes, I was like, this is the best thing ever. And it just got me hooked onto things like Pathfinder and D&D and towards Cyberpunk, and just generally threw me into the world of tabletop that I wished I'd been part of a lot sooner. So yeah, Starfinder is a sci-fi based tabletop game from the guys at Paizo, based off their Pathfinder system. The beginner box is this thing right here. So what you get is the stuff that you need as a GM, the games master, or as a player to begin your adventures within the Pact Worlds. And this particular one is set aboard, the adventure you get with it is set aboard Absalom Station in what's called the Spike, which is like this bit that hangs down from the bottom of Absalom Station. That is sort of like the rundown area, the slums. It's kind of like the underside of a city, really, like your sewer runs and stuff like that in basic dungeons. But let's do an unboxing, and then we can talk about things that are in there. So the box itself is very, very pretty. That artwork for me is just amazing. The android with the light up areas on their body, the Vesk wielding a Doshkow, which is like a energy based weapon that is absolutely brutal. We have a robot dragon. Do I have to say much more than the words robot and dragon? Technomancers. These are your mages, your wizards, your sorcerers, your warlocks, but it's all about kind of like technology at the same time. And we'll go through more of that as we go through. So there are different classes to what you get in things like Dungeons and Dragons, but once you work out what you want to play, it actually becomes relatively simple. So yeah, the box art alone is so good. I love that. It's one of the things that I just enjoy is the art of tabletop systems. One of my favorite things. So inside the box, first thing that you get is, just like with some other systems and their starter sets and starter kits, you get a set of polyhedral dice. So you get 7 dice, which are a D100, a D20, a D6, a D8, a D4, a D12, and a D10. These are the only dice that you're going to need to play a tabletop game like Starfinder, like Pathfinder, like Dungeons and Dragons. And you get a set within this, which is nice. You then got, these are bases, and I'll get to what they're bases for shortly. This is a nice little touch. These are what I can do on my turn. These are like action cards, and they've got what you can do on your turn, which is things like move, take an action. It says what your actions are, use an item, use a skill, and it tells you where you can find these within the hero's handbook, which within this set is a book that is for your players to understand how the rules work. And on the back, you have some of the conditions. So a lot of the time with those of us who have played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and I know I've certainly played a lot more Dungeons and Dragons than I have of Pathfinder and Starfinder, conditions happen in those games different to how it happens here. So you can find that like flat-footed, frightened, hampered, helpless, impaired, these basic ones that come down here, you've got a little bit of a blurb about what each one of those conditions is. And then inside the Hero's Handbook or within the DM's Guide, or within the core rulebook, if you end up with one of those, you get more conditions and more about each particular one and what can trigger those things. So that's nice that you can hand those to each player and you can be like, so what can I do on my turn again? That's really good. I like that a lot. You got a bit about resting on here, which is, again, different to other systems, but it tells you about that, which is really nice. So you get some cards there that you can hand out to your players so they can have a read through those as you are playing or before you play. So dice, bases, those. That is the beginner box components. We can see everything that we've got in there. I'm not going to worry too much about that. We have some character sheets. These are blank character sheets. So if you want to create your own characters or if you've got something ready to go, you can use one of these to put down your stats, down your weapons, your items, your inventory, spells, adventure log. It's all on there. And it's a nice little touch, and I quite like it because I find that I do fiddle while I'm playing. I do tend to be like, oh, I'm just going to put my dice in a big tower. But actually there's a place here where I would be quite pleased to put those on there. And that's because I am a little sad, but I'm okay with that. So character sheets, very cool. You get those most standard with most TTRPG starter boxes and rule books. So it's nice to have some of this there that you can probably scan in and copy yourself, or you can scan in, make digital. It's up to you what you do. Obviously, it does look a little different to a Dungeons and Dragons character sheet. So you do have your basic stats here, so strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. But then you've got things like your armor classes, where you have two. You have a KAC, a kinetic armor class, and an EAC, an energy armor class. It's covered in the rule books. I'm not going to go through that today, but don't worry about it. Your DM, your GM will go through stuff like that. So they're your blank character sheets if you're creating your own character. We then have these. These are 6 pre-generated characters that you can choose to just run straight out of the box without having to worry about character creation and how long you want to spend doing that. So these are a guide more than anything. So you have the Technomancer, the Soldier, the Mystic, the Mechanic, the Operative, and the Envoy. So they're your basic classes within Starfinder. They all have pre-generated stories and pre-generated stats and everything like that. So you don't need to worry about anything like that. You can just jump straight into this game playing the one that you want to play, which is nice because you get art with the front of it. So you can really imagine your character with that. That's something that I really liked because I think that if you are just trying to jump in or show somebody a TTRPG, rather than being like, right, here's a character sheet, now you're going to roll some dice. Now what that means, and you don't have to explain all that, you can like, here's a character sheet, I'll tell you what to roll and when to roll it. It can make things a little bit more quick and a little bit more fun. But also, these pre-generated characters do actually come up on a lot of the adventure path artwork. And I like that you could start as these guys in this particular adventure that you get within the starter box. And then you could move to further adventure paths like Dead Sons or Junker's Delight. And you can start doing bigger stories with these guys and see them, you know, like you do on this box, but on different modules. So you can really imagine yourself in those situations. So yeah, I really like that you get these pre-generated characters that do have some kind of art. And for later on, as we get through the box, there is actually little tokens for them as well to put down if you are ever in combat. So you have, again, that extra layer of immersion, which is very cool. Next up out of the box, we have this. This is a double-sided flip mat from Paizo. I actually really like this, and I found that I've used this in a few personal games myself so far, and it's one of the main reasons I wanted to get the starter box rather than just the core rulebook and go for what I already had. So the first side is this generic, basic metallic floor. This could be anywhere. This could be a hangar bay. It could be a bar. It could be littered with terrain, or it can be left open, and it's a very just generic, easy to use map that I really like. I think it's very, very versatile and modular in what you want to do with it. The other side, however, now this is a very specific map. You could use this for things like whenever you want to go somewhere else, but this particular map is designed to be the dungeon that you take your players through in the beginner box adventure path. So when they work their way down into the robot dragon's lair, which is this whole area here, you can have it covered up, you can reveal bits of it as they go through, or you can show them the whole map. But this is the actual map that the dungeon that they crawl through. It's still a TTRPG game with a dungeon that you crawl through. It's just a sci-fi one. So this lower decks of the space station, Absalom Station, this is awesome. This is so cool. I love the idea that like this is part of such a big structure and this one little area and so much can happen in it. I mean, there's a dragon in here. There is a robot dragon in here. Why is it here? What's it doing on a space station? Grab a gun and let's go find out. So a very awesome little map. And the other side is very versatile. So next out of the box, we have the 2 books that come with it. So what these books are, is I'm going to move this stuff out of the way so that we can see these ones a little bit better. You get the Game Master's Guide, and you also get the Hero's Handbook. So for those that play D&D, this is kind of like your basic rules that come within the Player's Handbook and also the DMG. These are obviously a bit more refined and a bit more lessened down because it's only a starter box. But if you want to expand on that and you want to get into Starfinder, you can get the core rulebook, which covers everything that is inside both of these and more. It is absolutely crazy. It's worth getting for the artwork alone, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today we're talking about these. So the Games Master's Guide. Let's go through this first. Again, blown away by the artwork on the covers. Always am by Starfinder because I am a sucker for sci-fi. But what you get is a basic understanding of the rules and how to play the game, and just a few extra little bits just to give you, maybe your players don't go into this dungeon or you don't want to use everything that's pre-generated. It gives you just that little bit extra to go with. So, you know, things like alien planets or cities. Then you've also got like different kinds of enemies here. So you've got all of these ones down here, which you can pick and choose from to go with whatever you want, which is really, really nice. There is a catalog of stat blocks and artwork for things like monsters. So you don't just go, oh, I don't know what those stats are, make them up for each individual one that you roll through. Let's say on this table that was back here that I was showing you, you have all the stats for them. So there is somewhat of an alien archive or monster manual within this book to give you something different to work with, which it's a really nice touch. It means that you don't just have to run the preset module. You can do the preset adventure path module, or you can change it up, or you can then, if everybody enjoys it, you can start your own campaign from these books, which I think that gives us a little bit more, and it's just a super nice touch to be able to give us those extra bits. Good old Dragonkins. I love the Dragonborn and the Dragonkins. There's your drow in these ones. They look pretty badass to me. Yeah, so a lot of different enemies that you can see within there. You've also got beyond the packed world. So if your party decides that they're either done with this adventure, they beat it, or that they don't want to do it whatsoever and they go off on their own into deep space or into the drift and far away. Beyond the pack worlds, we have that all here. You've got all about space travel. You've got a map for the packed worlds because players love asking about lore. So you've got right the way through from the Central Star, right the way through from Abalon, Castrovel. There's Absalom Station. See how it's taken place of a planet that was Galarion that was there. Yeah, you've got the full shebang in here. All the basic lore that you need to keep a game going. You've got a little bit on traps, spells, adventures and campaigns. Yeah, really, really super nice book. The start of it, which I've kind of done backwards, you've got the actual dungeon itself for the starter module. So obviously you've got where you come in, and it's got all the numbers laid out, all the rooms laid out in numbers. So things like your Goblin Guard, you've got the Pirate Hideout, Reactor Rooms, you've got the Hunting Grounds over here, all the way right through to the Dragon's Den, its lair. So as a GM, that gives us enough to be like, okay, they're moving through here, I can get this ready, or you know what's coming, which is nice. Or you can change it up and do it your own way. You get a little bit that you get to read out here to your players, which is nice. It's always good to have those there. There's also your Game Masters Only bits, a little bit on how to run the adventures. But yeah, all in all, it shows you how to take people through that. And it's just really well put together. And I think it's a good intro into the game. The Hero's Handbook itself is, again, fantastic artwork on there with the Technomancer and the Mystic. Really, really do love sci-fi art. What you get here is a bit about the different races in Starfinder and the classes and how to play things like that. So your basic races within Starfinder are your Android, Human, Lashunta, Shiren, Vesk, Ysoki. These are your 6 prime races within the Pact Worlds. If you want to know more about them, there will be a little bit, I believe, in here on each individual class and race, or there should be. There you go. So you get a little bit about each one, but not as much as you get with the core rulebook. So if you really want to delve deep into what each race is, get that. If you want to go even further, you can get the Pact Worlds book. This book is the book on lore for the Pact Worlds. It is chock full of the races, what planets they mostly come from, about the infrastructure of the solar system. It is everything that you need, along with a few extra little subclasses and character traits and racial traits in there. So it's really good. So you've got your character creation, which starts here, and it goes through the steps of how you create your character, which is a nice little thing for players to just see that without being overwhelmed. It's a very quick and easy way of describing it to them. You then have a little bit about what you need in terms of dice. That's fine. And we've got examples in here of how to play and stuff like that. You've got basic concepts. And it goes through a few different things about what you might encounter in terms of, especially things like words. So when people are like, oh, DC, this means difficulty class, or hit points, HP. You've got little bits about all the different information there for people who haven't played TTRPGs before. So that's quite nice. You've got a bit on the races there. Not a great amount, but it is still something to work with. Especially things like the Shiren, the Lashunta, the Vesk, and the Ysoki. These are like your non-prime races. So Android as well, actually. Human's the only real prime race in there. I will say as well that you can have the original prime races from things like Pathfinder and Starfinder in Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons in Starfinder, like your dwarves, elves, your half-elves, orcs. They are all playable races, and there is a conversion table in the back of the core rulebook that you can use for that. So don't feel limited to these, but it's good to get to know these ones. You've got how to level up in here and like things to look at for each individual class, which is really cool. You've got adventuring gear, little bits about that, which is a nice little touch. Maybe your players need a little bit of a push with like, hey, what kind of thing do you want? Oh, well, I want a energy sword. Who doesn't want a lightsaber? Small arms, melee weapons. Yeah, so you've got quite a bit in there. It's not going to cover, again, everything that the core rulebook covers, but it's enough to give players a jump start. So they're the 2 books that you get within there, and they're very, very nice. Next up, and last but not least, well, minus the Munchkin card that you get, these are your tokens. So what these are whereas with things like Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons, we have loads of miniatures now, tons of them out there, and more coming because they are such popular systems, the fantasy-based systems. However, we don't have much in the way of sci-fi. Yes, we have things like Warhammer, and we have now Infinity the Game, and a few others that are really starting to come forwards, but we didn't when this first came out, and it's still a lot less than what we see for the other systems. So what they did was create paper tokens. These are to go in with these bases. So when you have something, for example, let's look at, if you go with one of the pre-gen characters, let's say the android operative, you can pop that out, put it in the base, which is the right size base for a medium-sized creature, and you have Isef, the android operative, as a player token or a miniature on the table. So that's nice because if you're playing the pre-gens, you can see yourself and you're like, oh, that's what I look like. That's what I look like here. And you can really immerse yourself in that world. But because there are so many variations on enemies or other aliens and things that we can face within Starfinder, they've given us some extras to look at. So we have things like the Skittermanders, which are like kind of the mascots now of Starfinder. They're these cute little 6-armed things that you can play as a race now or have as your team mascot. You've got your goblins here, you've got your space pirate, you've got all of the bad guys that you need to run the module, and then those extra ones that I was talking about earlier. So things like your Vesks here and other prime races like Shirans, Lashunters, humans, androids. But then we've got things like your Crest Eater. That's a large creature down there. We've got your, I can never pronounce this one. I think it's Sarek. I think the K is silent. Another large alien. You've got things like Hespers, your Greys, which are like your standard, kind of more daunting grey aliens with the big heads and eyes. We've got your gang members in here, like Gang Toughs. We've got evil sorcerers and spellcasters, Dragonkin. There's a lot in here. Assembly Ooze, for those of you who are into your gelatinous cubes. Yeah. And things like security guards and security robots, extra little minions and bad guys. Enough in here to run a decent adventure or a decent campaign. So I like those. And I do believe that they have come out with, so the monster manuals for Starfinder are called the Alien Archives. And there's Alien Archives 1 through 4. And you can get the paper tokens for all 4 of those now, I believe. And for certain modules as well. So it's nice to have such a wide range within a starter box. And I know that I can progress and get more if I need to. So yeah, that's what you get inside the Starfinder beginner box. Hopefully you'll try it out one day, or maybe you already have and you just want to add something extra in here like these tokens to your collection. Either way, I think it's a great little purchase, and I'll put a link in the description below to a few, for me, UK-based retailers of this, but also I will try and find if Paizo have this on their website and put the link in the description below as well. So thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye now.